Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan, and I'm with me in his purple tie this evening. Why are you wearing purple? We beat the Horned Frogs.
I wore it on purpose as...
Were you trying to troll them?
Yes.
Then it should have like burnt orange blood stains on it for
It will.
massacre.
And shall. It will
that
and
we
shall.
took last
It
weekend.
will and shall.
I'm disappointed in you, Julio.
You know,
Julio Trader Vela, my co-host this evening.
the man...
He's speechless about it because he didn't even realize what he did.
You're right. You know what? But go you know what? Go Frogs. As a humble...
Seriously?
Because we're back.
No,
We're back
we might be.
and better than ever.
We'll see.
You see the defense?
I saw Oklahoma almost get beat by Army, which was...
Well, they're coming because the horns are coming.
That's right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be here for the next hour. We are kicking off our candidate show this evening. We're going to hopefully have candidates lined up on every show from now till the election date, and tonight kicks it off. If you want to get in, before I introduce my guests, I'm going to give you our contacts for this evening. 713-807-1794 is the call-in number. You can also hit us up on Twitter at HCCLA_TV. But let me bring in the two candidates we got. Now, I have to mention first, ladies and gentlemen, we have two Democrat candidates on the show tonight. We have Brian Warren from the candidate for the 209th District Court.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we have Danny Lacayo for the 182nd.
All right, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Glad you guys could be here. Now, we contacted both, we reached out to both Republican candidates for Judge Mike McSpadden of the 209th and Jesse McClure, who is Danny's opponent for the 182nd. We have not heard back from either one of them. And that's not to say that they're not going to come on. We've offered them a chance to come on. They didn't get back to us about coming on tonight with their opponents, but we're going to offer the same opportunity to both sides, Democrats and Republicans, to come on the show whenever we can get people to come on. So we're not in any way siding with one side or the other. I want to be very clear about that. Just because we have two Democratic opponents on tonight does not mean we are, endorsing Democrats over Republicans. This has just happened to be the way it worked out for this evening. So if you do have any questions, like I said, if you're a Republican and want to call in, if you're the opponents for these two and you're watching and you want to call in, call in. I'm happy to take your call, happy to take your tweets on the air.
Let me throw a softball.
You're going to throw a softball?
I'm going to throw a softball. Why is it important to have both sides? So you're both Dems. We need Republicans to call in or come on the show. Why is it important to have both sides?
I think it's great to hear both sides and how they're going to tackle these issues and what they're going to do and their plans kind of moving forward. Like, what are their plans for the court? How do they think they can do things better? In the case, I'm running against a long-sitting judge who's been there since the 80s. So a lot of the ideas I have is moving forward. What can we do to kind of bring this court into the 21st century? I'd love the opportunity to debate that if the opportunity is presented.
Danny, what says you?
I'm running for the 182nd, and it's an open bench. So whoever gets in there, Jesse McClure or myself, hopefully myself, is going to have to look at the court as a whole, brand new, and try to develop a new strategy of how to move forward. And I think that, I'm not sure what his ideas are, but my ideas as well are of moving everything forward smoothly, ready to be on the job, ready to be a judge, ready to do what's right.
How much do you guys think that, I mean, we look, I don't know if anybody saw what happened in Washington this week, but, we have a lot on the national level of just headbutting in terms of political ideologues. We've got it to some degree at the local level here in Texas. You see what's going on with Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke in the Senate run. You see it a little bit, you come down a little further to Houston, you're seeing it a little bit with what's going on between Lizzie Fletcher and John Culberson out in District 7. Those are kind of the heated races we see on here in Texas, from my perspective, where you kind of see some of the vitriol coming out. You don't see that so much on the judicial races. And I think a lot of it, and I want to get y'all's perspective, but I'm going to throw a couple thoughts out there first. But a lot of us, we've all worked together, both sides. The courthouse is, the Harris County Courthouse is almost kind of like high school. Yeah, we all might vote different ways, but we've all had to kind of be in the same room with each other and learn to get along. I mean, you were a prosecutor, you were a prosecutor. We've always been defense lawyers, but now you guys are on the defense side too. I mean, a lot of people have worn different hats. So, I mean, how are you able to distinguish, both of y'all, what what the Democrats' platform stands for in terms of the criminal courts versus the Republicans' platform.
You know, it's tough to speak for them.
Yeah.
They're obviously not here, but I think moving forward, we have kind of new ideas. This bond thing, the bond lawsuit that we're in is up to $9 million now.
And that's just affecting the misdemeanor courts right now.
Correct, but it's coming for the felony courts.
Sure.
And as you know, you practice a lot in federal court, and so do I. When they come and tell the federal court, this system that you have that you use nationwide is totally wrong and we're doing it the right way, you know, you're never going to convince a federal judge that they're wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And at best, you're going to hopefully that they will listen to you. But if you're telling them they're wrong, you've already lost.
At the least.
Absolutely. And what we're doing, that's going to come for the felony courts as well. And we just need to start making a distinction between low-level crimes, nonviolent offenders, our low-level drug crimes, and start doing more to get those people out of jail so that they can have their day in court. We shouldn't be housing, what is our jail now, 75% of people who are on pretrial detention?
Yeah.
This needs to change, and it's
incredible.
coming, whether it's hopefully because we win and we change things, we move forward, or it's going to be through a federal lawsuit, and we're going to be, Judge Rosenthal is going to order our county to change. And this is very expensive.
But it does seem like there's at least a fairly substantial segment of the Republican Party that is in agreement on that.
Danny, what's your perspective on that?
Well, with respect to my values are fit in line with the Democratic values. The Democratic Party didn't make my values. Just growing up in my community, that's how I felt. And so naturally I align with the Democratic Party. With respect to the bail reform, there has to be a distinction between nonviolent, violent offenders. I deal with primarily my clients are poor people. They're poor minorities. I would say 99% of my clients are locked up, and I have to go visit them, whether it was during Harvey or even now on any given day. That's where my clientele is. And I understand that when they're locked up, especially on nonviolent offenses, their families aren't, they're not working. They're not housing, they can't pay their rent. They can't pay their cell phone bill. And it's saddening at times because you know that people do make mistakes. Obviously, some people need to go to prison and other people need rehabilitation. They need their day in trial or in court, and that's very important to me as well.
How are you going to handle dockets? Harris County, I think, moved up in the rankings, and now they're projecting something like a 20 million growth in the next 40 years in Houston and surrounding county. I think it was like 10 to 20 million if the job growth continued. How in the world are y'all going to manage a docket?
I think we need smarter solutions than what we're doing now. Doing things the same way we've done in the 90s, it can't continue. When I was at the DA's office, I remember Susan Brown had the lowest docket. When I was in her court, I think she had something around 150 cases was her total docket. And running a court that way, when you have 150 cases, you can do things differently. When the dockets are now inching closer and closer to 1,000 in some courts, I think mine included, or the 209th included, the court I'm running for, has over 1,000 cases pending. So we need to do different things. When we get back into the CJC, we understand the elevator systems are horrible. We can't continue to have everyone coming. One of my suggestions is that if your case is unindicted and you're represented by a lawyer, there's no reason for you to come to court. There's no reason to bring a defendant there because we know those cases do not plead before lab reports come in, before those cases are indicted, and that's just clogging up the system. I have no problem having lawyers come in to talk to the DA's office and have those conversations take place. The case shouldn't pen for 90 days and nothing happen. However, it is important to start alleviating some of the stressors on our system.
And I think a lot of the work has to be done between the resets. The lawyers need to communicate better with the other lawyers, the prosecutors of the defense, and see what can get done. I'm not as concerned with respect to docket as opposed to defendants. They're real people.
Right.
So we need so if a docket's high or whatever, I understand docket management, but at the same time too, we have to look at each individual person.
Let me ask y'all, and I hear what you're saying about how we manage dockets, and Julio, I know, and this is also a question that I want to throw out for you too, because I know you have a heavy appointed load, and Brian and I, we've done appointments in federal court, and the difference there is the appointment system, they pay you by the hour in federal court, they don't pay you by the setting. And I feel like over in the state courthouse, and it's also on a lot of private retained cases, that a lot of these lawyers charge poor or people with very low incomes, they charge them by the setting. And so that feeds the fire on this thing, and the judges, in effect, have been enablers of this, in that they've fostered this system of let's reset, bring them back as many times because you've got lawyers or appointed lawyers getting paid by the settings. How do we eliminate that?
It's a good question. The way the system's set up now with the paid for the resets, there are definitely lawyers who probably do abuse that. But I do think the federal system where you're getting paid per hour, where you're working on a case, where you're saying, if it takes you, why should you be paid less to work in your office than you should be paid to be in court?
Right.
If you paid me what it took for me to go to court and get some bogus reset, hey, we're here, here's a reset, thanks, and they got to run to another court, versus I could just take care of that in my office, that would eliminate so much waste. What have you all seen? I mean, you all see it. There is so much waste in the system, and how, or do you have any ideas, or do you believe that there's waste in the system?
I think what we're getting to now with and a lot of the federal stuff is as well, you get a hard drive, you get discs, if you want to print it out, feel free, but everything's on a little disc and you have everything. You have a USB drive. Now with what Kim Mogg's doing, it's late. We should have been doing this 10 years ago.
Sure.
But when we've gone to electronic files, you can pick up your case, you can look at it. You put your kids to bed, it's 8 o'clock, you can sit down on your computer and you can say, all right, let me see if the defendant's statement is in.
Yes.
And you can listen to it ahead of time, take notes, and then do it on your own time as opposed to going to court, seeing if the statement's there. And if you're waiting on it, you can call the DA, email them and say, look, we got this coming up next week. I still haven't had his statement yet, and I need that in order to properly advise them. And these things can happen out of court. However, you're right, though, that lawyers on appointed cases in state court are disincentivized from that. You get paid more for doing that in court. And that's not what we should be doing.
Right.
We don't want to increase the number of court settings. What we should be doing is incentivizing out-of-court work. And with the electronic system, it's a lot better now. You can do that.
Well, it needs to be defendant-based, and if we're really looking out as a defense attorney, we need to look out for our clients. Our clients are supposed to be number one. And so we need to make sure that everything that needs to be done for them has to be done, whether it's in between court settings. Many times in arraignment, you don't have any information. Then second, third setting, you have an offense report. Well, that's 3 times that they haven't been able to come to work because they're there for 3 or 4 hours a day, and many employers don't want them there half a day.
Well, part of the gig is being available too. We have all been in courts where we need to get something done, but there's no judge. Okay? We've all been there. And we have cursed about it and said things that we plead the fifth and for years. Are you all going to be there? Well, I mean, you're going to be there at 8:30, or you like the afternoon dockets? I mean,
well, I was here.
What's the plan?
Well, for this show, we were here 30 minutes early.
Yeah. We're the ones on time. For the record.
That is true.
I like to come early because I like to take care of business, and if I'm elected, I would rather start court like at 9:15 because I don't want someone to not be able to come on time because of the elevators or parking or whatever. However, I want to be there, and I want to be there until finish of business because that's our job. As a future elected official, you have to be available for people, and because there's responsibilities. Being a judge isn't a game. It's something serious. You have to take it serious, and you have to treat every single person the right way. And by not being available, number one, you're wasting the government's time. You're wasting the defense attorney's time. You're wasting the colleagues' time. You're wasting all the people in your court's time, and they deserve better.
So let's talk about bonds.
Okay.
Let's talk about bonds. Are you guys just going to follow whatever the report says?
If you're asking specifically, what am I going to do on a case?
No,
I can't tell you, obviously,
in general. I mean, so we go to court, and they get this packet, and the judge gets the packet, and that's what it is.
Well, if you have a big drug case, what does the DA do? They double the street value, which is not really the street value, but they double it, and that's what their bond is. And so if you have a kilo of cocaine, they say that kilo is worth, $2 million.
Right.
And so he needs a $4 million bond, when in reality it's about $30,000 worth of cocaine. But if you have a gram of cocaine, and you have a drug problem, your bond's set at $15,000. It's just, there's something broken with this system, and we need to do more. I'm not against, I think we need to move to a risk-based system. In federal court, everybody gets a bond unless they're a flight risk or unless they're a danger to the community. And that's where we need to be. And we're talking PR bonds for the most part, or unsecured bonds. In Travis County, what they do is that instead of paying your bondsman 10%, you pay that into the clerk's office.
I heard that today.
I have a client who's charged with manslaughter up there. He's on a $75,000 bond, and he has paid $7,500 into the clerk's office, and he will get that back regardless of what happens on the case, assuming he hasn't violated his bond. We need better solutions than what we're doing now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. Look, I think one of the big problems that we see, and now we've seen this influx, as you were talking about all the people that are in the Harris County Jail. We've seen some people going to Louisiana. I think some people have been going to Beaumont.
How do you get a fair trial when you can't talk to your lawyer because you're in a different state? And we're in Texas. Texas is the biggest, in the continental United States, the biggest state. We're sending people to other states. And that means we're doing something wrong.
We're sending them like 4.5 hours away.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not exactly convenient.
Exactly.
There's no airport to fly.
It's an overnight. Yeah, that's an overnight drive.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to stay in a hotel to go visit your client to talk about your upcoming trial. That basically, I mean, you're denying them a fair trial at that.
Right.
I called the client. I had to set up a phone call to speak with my client. I didn't know he was getting moved so quickly. And they're both Spanish speakers, and the captain got on the phone. I'm like, can I speak with whomever and whoever? I set up the appointment. And they were like, I'm glad you called because we don't speak any Spanish over here, and they don't know what they did. They think they did something wrong. And I got them on the phone, and it wasn't to tell them about the case. It was just to tell them about what was happening to them. And it's hard to show them a video or some kind of audio tape when they're not there in front of you. And so these guys, what they felt was, number one, they were scared because they thought, a lot of the clients, they thought, like, was I sentenced or something like that? I was like, no, you just got moved. I'm trying to get you back as soon as we can. But there's something about being able to speak with the client or speak, with someone instead of trying to talk to them on the phone and someone that doesn't know anything about the system.
Face to face? You mean like human contact?
Yeah.
That's right.
I think there's a double-edged sword. So less defendants or less individuals accused going to court, less attorney appearances, less interaction with the human being. That can't be good.
No, it can't be. And I've seen a lot of cases, and I don't take enough. I don't have a big enough state docket to know the impact of this. And maybe you guys can help me out on whether or not this is actually a thing. Okay. But I have noticed of more and more people coming in on state cases that I have seen that in years past would have they would have been out in 12 to 24 hours under the old bond system because they would have gotten put in, even on something like a first offense DWI, a $500 bond would have been set. Their friend would have gone and bailed them out within a couple hours of the arrest. Whereas what's happening now is you get this refer for a 15-17 hearing, and it could be 48, 72. People are staying in jail 2 to 3 days that otherwise could have gotten out, and their friends are sitting there going, I'm trying to bail them out, but there's no bond set, and that's because they haven't gotten a hearing yet. And so I wonder if the crowding, the overcrowding, if that is a contributing factor, that you now have more people who are there's people getting released, but you have this backup because there are people who otherwise would have been out, and instead they're staying in for 2 to 3 days.
And now you can't put any more people in.
Yeah. Right.
And it's important to realize that the system we're going from is just and I had the bond schedule memorized when I was a prosecutor and I was working intake, and I just know, I can count his criminal history. This is exactly what his bond's going to be. And it wasn't, I was recommending it, just this is what they're going to set. We've gone from, on a piece of paper, it doesn't matter anything about you, your risk, whether or not you're going to reoffend, whether or not you're stable in the community, whether or not you're a danger, but here's your number. Now we're going to a system that's based more on the individual, which is the right system. Now, do we need more magistrates? Should it be quicker?
Yeah.
You're right, it should be. How we fix that, I think, is a good question. I don't think necessarily going backwards to a bond schedule, though, is the right.
No, I agree, but I've had cases where the client has a warrant out for them, and they haven't been arrested because thankfully they haven't sent the police down to beat down their door and take them in handcuffs.
And they can't make a no arrest.
And they can't make a no arrest bond. So we'll literally take them in, and it's a coin flip whether or not the judge that you go in front of will let them walk out with a bondsman, because it's easier just to have the judge set a $500 or $1,000 bond than have to go through a hearing of whether or not they qualify for a PR bond.
Well, I think the problem, or one of the problems, is that no one likes to spend money on the criminal justice system.
Right.
We all know that. Look at the courthouse. You know, everyone agrees it's a mess, but no one wants to spend that kind of money because it's not a popular thing to spend money on.
It's not the issue.
And so we
Right.
we need more judges, we need more prosecutors, we need more defense attorneys, we need everything, but it's not a fun thing. You know, no one wants to come see it. You just have to be in it. And that has to change. You know, that's something that we need to change, but we've been fighting about this for years now.
Where does
over
that
10
funding
years.
come from? Where does it come from?
People have to make decisions on what they want to spend their money on, and unfortunately, when it comes to the criminal justice system, people don't want to. They rather spend their money on on other things, and unfortunately, who suffers? It's the people that are in custody, the defense attorneys, the prosecutors, even the judges. You know, because judges want to do the right thing, and it's hard when you have such a big docket and you're trying to do certain things. I go to many courts, and a lot of the judges, I consider them my friends. And I see them working, and it's hard sometimes.
It's hard, but when you see Judge George Powell pull up with that blue Porsche, have you seen him park right up to the juvenile building? He parks sometimes just right on the juvenile building, and he strolls in there, and the man has delivered injustice in his courtroom and everything.
I think.
Can y'all?
I mean, specifically with the court I'm jumping into, it obviously has the highest trial docket. Cases are routinely 6 or 7 years before they go to trial.
Jeez.
Having a low docket.
What?
Yeah.
What?
These are demonstrable facts. Like, you can go on the clerk's website, you can figure this stuff out. And because I'm running for this court, like, it interests me to figure this stuff out. A normal person wouldn't spend the time figuring this out.
Well, yeah.
But I have a case in there that's 6.5 years old. And it's just never, and it's been on the trial docket now for 4 years, and it's not the oldest case, and other cases are going. They're more serious cases. Thankfully, he's on bond. And so, yes, he has this hanging over his head, but he's not in jail. And so the people in jail, should take preference when they go to trial. And the only reason I'm saying that is that it doesn't matter if your docket is 1,000 or 900. It's how are you giving people their day in court? Are you giving them a chance to go to trial? A lot of our cases need to be tried. And without a judge showing up and pulling juries over there and letting defense lawyers do their jobs, letting prosecutors do their jobs, making sure both sides get a fair trial, that's what we need to be doing. That's what I hope to change in the 209th.
What's sort of your fixings on the bench that you're running for?
Well, I'm with the Public Defender's Office. We don't do much work in there. But what I know is that if you're looking for someone like myself that is going to be fair to every single person, that's going to be, I'm not saying Judge Barr wasn't, she's retiring, and I practiced in front of her and she was fine, but I'm saying now, since an open bench, someone that's been a prosecutor, someone that's been a defense attorney, that makes a big difference. And the reason why is this. When I was a prosecutor, I'd win every motion. You win your trials, and you think you're like, oh wow, you're brilliant.
Granted.
So then now, when you become a defense attorney, and I told this to one of the prosecutors, I was like, man, I used to be brilliant, and everyone started laughing because it takes that dose of the other side. Yeah. I was at the jail and I got punched in the face.
I remember that. We talked about it on this show.
And what it
is that guy going to be here?
And
later
I wasn't. I hope not.
On?
But what it taught me was I wasn't mad at him.
Sure.
But I was mad at the system. I was mad at the situation because we were put in a place where something was going to happen, and we all knew it was going to happen.
It's a melting pot.
Right, and it's scary in that little room, and something was going to go on. But my point is that had I not experienced that, then you don't get the full circle of everything, and that makes me a more humble person, I think. And so, if you're looking for someone that's going to be fair to everyone, going to give everyone their time to be heard, that's what I am. That's how I'm going to play it.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, being on both sides, it just changes everything. Like sitting with a family and knowing what it means. I've had a lot of drug clients who've gone in and said, look, they're offering you $12.44 a time served, and they're ready to hug me. I'm like, but don't take it because you're not guilty, and they take it. We understand these things because we've been there. You know what it's like talking to mothers who have their kids in jail, and what that affects you, and what it means when that kid goes to prison. Like, it's good having those experiences. It's good being a prosecutor too. You understand what the victims are going through, and it's just we've had way too long where we've had our benches are former prosecutors are now retired to become judges.
Well, let me ask you, when you were a prosecutor, what was the driving force within you? Like, you know, every administration has their saying. I won't go into some of the things that were said a couple administrations back, but you know, there's the win at all costs, or these things. At what was that ever? What was your belief? I mean, it obviously wasn't. Because
Thank
you're
you.
here now, it obviously wasn't. But as a prosecutor, I mean, you're a defense.
Or was it? Has he
Well,
evolved?
no, I
you're a-
will tell you.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
it could be.
I won every single felony trace I tried as a felony prosecutor, obviously. I won every one of my trials, and that was really important to me, and that was something that was pushed into me and ingrained in me as a young lawyer. I mean, I was in my early 20s. It was, you were supposed to win. These people come in, and they're guilty. You know, and that's just the mindset that it was in the early 2000s.
sure.
Being a defense attorney has helped me realize that there's usually a different side of things, and that a lot of the people who come before you are not necessarily, they're not bad people. A lot of them make bad choices, and some of them are actually innocent who do get charged. And it's important to have a judge who's willing to, you know, let you come into court and do your thing, let the prosecutor put on their case, and really be there just to make sure that the rules are filed, and it's a fair trial. That's all. You know, they should not have an outcome. They shouldn't have, I was a prosecutor, I trained this person. You know, it's good to be on both sides.
Sure.
And just, that's how you become fair. And I think becoming a defense attorney has been it's changed a lot. You know, I got away from that. And I think we, as a whole in Harris County, have gotten away from that too. But I think I've changed a ton since I've been a defense attorney.
And the office didn't give me my mindset. I gave the office my mindset. I don't know if that makes sense,
Hey,
but
the border
I had,
the border didn't cross me, man. I didn't cross the border, but it crossed me.
because I mean, the way I grew up a certain way, you know, people ask me like, why did I become a lawyer? And this kind of explains my whole life and philosophy. I came from Nicaragua when I was 2 years old. My parents didn't speak that great of English, and my language was going to be English, you know, so I learned it. So growing up as a kid, I would always have to like talk for my parents. You know, if someone was on the phone, I'd get on the phone. If we're at the grocery store, I'd get on and they were learning English gradually, but then they kind of felt embarrassed on how they spoke English at the time. And my parents are well-educated, engineer and school teacher, but now my dad at first was doing dry cleaning and working at a 7-Eleven at the night shift, you know. And so throughout the years, I kind of became their voice. And one day I was getting frustrated with my parents. I'm like, man, I always have to call like if something goes wrong, I always have to call someone. And it's getting old or whatever. And my mom's like, do you know what, Danny? You need to be our voice, because we don't have a great voice. We need to be our voice, because people think we're stupid because we don't speak great English. You know, we're not stupid people. We just have an accent. And so be our voice. So when I went to the DA's office, I kind of put that in my head, and I was the complaining witness's voice when it was appropriate. You know, and then now I'm at the PD's office, and I'm the defendant's voice when it's appropriate. Now I want to be the community's voice. I want to be the judge. So that's my whole mindset in my entire life. It comes back to my childhood. You know, I grew up on the Southwest side. I've been robbed. I've seen ag robbery. I've seen a lot of stuff, you know. And I don't let the community change me that way. I was trying to change the community, you know, by going to a certain high school, things like that, you know. So you can't let things change you. You got to change it.
It's a good mantra.
Yeah, that's one of the most powerful things I've ever.
That's
I
one of
will
the
punch
most
it out.
powerful things I've ever heard,
No,
man.
it really. I've
That's
heard
how I
you said this
feel.
before.
Strong.
It is the most powerful thing I've ever heard anybody say about why they're running for judge, about just to be the voice of the people who don't, and it really should be all of our mantras. I don't want to steal your thunder, but it is really like probably what justice is all about.
No, I mean, I think that's important for anybody that's a lawyer. You're speaking for the people who can't speak in court for themselves. I mean, that's your role as a lawyer, whether it is as a criminal defense lawyer representing your client, whether it is as a prosecutor representing the complainant, whether it's as a civil lawyer representing the plaintiff or a defendant. I mean, you're the voice. That's what we do. And I mean, I guess the interesting thing is you guys have both been trial lawyers for so long. How do you envision making the transition to being now an umpire, not being able to mix it up?
And balance.
Yeah.
And balance.
Well, that's the good part about being a defense attorney and being a prosecutor, because you see both sides. You know, if you see one side, you think a certain way. But now as a defense attorney, you know, when I switched over, because literally I was from on the Friday of 2013 of August, I want to say, I was a prosecutor. And that Monday, I was at the PD's office. And people were like, well, why didn't you take time off? Because to me, having a job is very important growing up, like with not a lot of money. So it's not like I knew I could take a week off or whatever, but I didn't want to, because I'm like, I got to get my new job, because my parents are like, well, you're like, got to be like a monkey, one branch to another. You can't fall, you know. But that the first week I was like, oh my God, this guy's in so much trouble. And one of the prosecutors, one of the defense attorneys at the PD's office was like, man, you're reading the offense report. You're not looking at the case.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And I was like, if you act like a prosecutor on these cases, how are you supposed to do something? You got to look at, is there any more witnesses? It was a crowd. Go find someone in that crowd and see what they have to say. Maybe your client's guilty, maybe he's not. But you got to investigate it, and that's what makes a difference. And that's what's great about being a prosecutor and a defense attorney.
Well, how are you gonna bring? Okay, well, you can't bring that. You can, because we don't leave our life experiences at the door. You're coming to the bench, and you're gonna sit, and people's lives are literally gonna hang in y'all's balance. You're gonna have to bring some defense. You're gonna have to bring some prosecutor, and then you're gonna have to balance family life. How are y'all even possible? Like, how is it possible that you're doing this and running and balancing cases? What do you do?
No pressure, right? Thank you for putting all
What
this
do
out
you
there.
do? Well, I mean, what is it that relaxes you and you're on the trail?
No, I work out a lot. I love to run. I have my little kids that run me ragged. And
How many kids do you have?
I have 2 and another one due on election day because my wife and I can't plan.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's something. No, we're really excited. I have another little boy. We're going to have 3 little boys. But I think, and I don't want you to mention any names, but you've been in trial with more judges than you can probably name. You've been in with good judges who are fair to you. You've been in judges who obviously have they know which side
They got a
want on.
bias.
Yeah,
They got
absolutely.
bias. They got bias.
And I think, I've tried cases here. I've tried cases in Louisiana, in state court, federal court. I've seen really good judges and I've seen bad judges. Like, I know the right way to do things.
Yeah.
One of the judges who I'm sure real well is Judge Ellison, who's had more effect on me, and just the compassion and the humility of that man, being probably the most brilliant man down in that courthouse. It just changes a lot. And I think you model after who you want to be like. And we all have these models in our head. Who's the judge I'm going to be like? How do I want to be in trial? How am I going to be fair? How am I going to balance those things? And I think, we do look to, we're standing on the shoulder of giants when we go to court.
I mean, I think from the defense perspective, that's all you want. You just want to be able to have a fair shot, right? You just want to be able to not be hamstrung in presenting your case or cross-examining a witness. You don't want to be cut off. You don't want to feel like, man, I'm just not getting what I need to do here in order to effectively represent my client.
And that's why you need that other perspective. Like, I have a beautiful wife, a 2-year-old baby boy who I try to catch, him before he goes to bed as much as I can and play with him.
Hold on. Let me ask you, man. Who's your wife?
Brittany Lacayo. She's been practicing now, I want to say 6 years, 7 years, I forget. But
She's a phenomenal lawyer.
What's the age difference between you two?
It's a bit, but she teaches me things all the time about the law. The way she practices, and she's just so, and I always brag about her, and
Brag about her.
but to me, she's a genius, and
She absolutely.
and she's aggressive, and she's smart, and she does federal and state work, and so I'm always asking her questions, more than she asks me questions, to be honest with you. But we have a 2-year-old son, and that's the most important things in our lives, and we have so much fun, being with him, and today I'm going to miss his bedtime, unfortunately, but it's just a good time. But I do agree that who you are personally, I think, will kind of show you how you're going to be on the bench. And people want respect. And I think being a professional, you have to show people respect. And there's no need, you could be a judge, you could be a defense attorney or a prosecutor, but there's no need to be rude or be so aggressive that you don't want to practice in someone's court. Because the bottom line is, if you're going to follow the Constitution of America, there are certain rules that we're going to have to follow that we agree with, and you have to follow those rules, and you have to follow the law. And being a prosecutor, being a defense attorney, you learn things. We were practicing law. I learn things every single day. I saw you a couple of months ago at the courthouse, and we were talking about certain topics, and we were like, oh, let's do this or whatever. And I learned something, and you learned something, and that's how you do it. Every single day you have to learn. You have to want to learn. And when you don't want to learn, that's when you're messing up.
So there was
That's why they call it the practice.
That's
of law.
right. That's right.
There was this time when I had this terrible D-dub. It's one of them complete waste of time. We're talking about waste, where the district attorney's office files a misdemeanor and a felony out of the same transaction. So there was a DWI and
Evading arrest or something?
failure to stop and render aid, death.
Ooh.
Somebody died, and So I'm carrying the misdemeanor along, limping along, and I look and say, "Oh, look, Danny's on the case. Danny's on it. We're just gonna ride it out, man. We're gonna ride it out."
Danny, you do all the hard
Yes,
lifting.
sure enough. Next setting. Hey, man, what's up with it? Oh, no, we took care of it. It's done. Boom. Everything worked out. And I was like, dude, Danny's a bad dude. Danny's bad, man.
You know, and you do right by the client, you know,
Sure.
and then whether they're rich or poor, and they feel good. I mean, they're not happy they're there or whatever, and you know,
Nobody is.
someone lost their life, so we take that seriously as well. But in that role, my job was to defend the client, and your role was to defend the client on another case. And we worked well together to do what we thought was best, and the client thought was best, and the state thought was fine as well. And the case luckily worked out in his favor, I thought.
So you're in a federal trial or
I was just
finishing up?
I just finished a federal carjacking trial, really tough case.
Both you and Jimmy are experienced trial lawyers and have significant federal experience. Are there things from federal court, Jimmy, I ask you, from your experience, and also Brian, I ask you on your experience, are there things that you can bring in that may work?
Man, I think that in looking at how someone's going to be a judge, right? I mean, I've seen a couple people now transition onto federal benches, and seen what they've become. Judge Greg Costa, who's now on the Fifth Circuit. I went against him in several cases when he was an assistant U.S. attorney, and you always knew he was going to be a very good judge. First of all, he clerked for the Chief Justice, William
Right.
Rehnquist, so
Right.
you knew he was smart. And
He had a decent resume, is what you're saying.
he had a decent resume, and he was one of the only line prosecutors at the U.S. Attorney's Office who didn't go to the appellate section for help in briefing to respond. And you've always hated that, because when you saw that you had a viable kind of motion to write, you're like, but I got to go against Greg.
Oh, man.
It was just such a punch to the gut, because you're like, I'm just going to get killed in motion practice on this thing. But with someone like him, what you saw, and I think there are other prosecutors who would make a very good transition, and you guys have both been there and done that and transitioned to the defense side. One of the things that I saw with him was there was never any game playing. There was always an honest, here's everything I have, okay? And if I can't beat you, I'm not going to take this case. I mean, he took very seriously the evaluation process that the U.S. Attorney's Manual put forth before you could bring a case. And if we had a case that there was an investigation and there was no indictment yet, he had a very good policy about, come to me, and I'll always take an attorney proffer from you. And an attorney proffer, for those who don't know or aren't speaking the lingo, is a proffer session is where you can bring your client in. They sign what's called a queen for a day letter that provides them a limited immunity for that transaction, where they go in, they sit down with the prosecutor and the agent and tell you everything they know. And if they've lied or misrepresented anything, then they can be charged. And it's a limited, it's not a complete blanket immunity. So it's just,
And only for that limited
purpose, yeah. And they can still make use of what you say there. I mean, they can still go out and gather other evidence. They just can't use your statements against you. But Greg always had that, Judge Costa always had that open policy about, I'm going to listen to everything, and I'm going to make a very, concentrated effort to make the right choice. And he would always offer, if the case needed to be worked out, he would make a reasonable offer. And it's just, you see those traits. And I think that those sorts of things, they translate whether or not it's in federal court or it's in state court. I mean, there's just, Brian, you were talking about Judge Ellison. And I mean, one of the things that he did when he first got to Houston was he invited a bunch of the defense bar, I was lucky enough to be included at the time, to come and sit in his chambers, and he had food
That's
and
awesome.
beer
Nice.
and wine.
That's awesome.
And he just wanted to get to know the defense bar. He
Sure.
had brought the U.S. Attorney's Office in, had them in, and he sits. We're all sitting down there, and he says, "I just want to know how I can be a better judge for you all as the defense bar."
Wow.
And I mean, I just sat there and was like, I've never heard.
First of all,
That's awesome.
everything this man does is complete class. Like you walk into his courtroom and it's like walking through a living room. I've been in there maybe 5 times. I hadn't been in there in a year and a half. And as soon as he's done with our hearing, he came down and said, "Mr. Warren, how you been? I haven't seen you in a while.
Shakes your
How are your
hand.
children doing?"
Yeah.
And I was like, first that you remember me, I'm just blown away, and I'm going to be bouncing around the room for the rest of this
Right.
time I'm here. But like, it's the class and it's the way he treats people. And I
Right.
think you were speaking about this before. We need to do that as judges if we're lucky enough to get elected. It's the way you treat everybody.
Of course.
From the defendants to the defense bar to the prosecution. It's you set the standard how people are going to be treated in that court. And if anyone falls below that standard, no matter who it is, you need to correct that standard. And it's that cordiality, it's his professionalism that's just something I hope to emulate.
Yeah, I mean,
It's hard, but
it is. But I mean, I think, and if you guys are elected, I mean, I have no doubts that each of y'all will develop your own personality on the bench. I mean, hopefully it doesn't become some tyrant personality that we can deal with.
Dude, I will call you
First
on.
off-
If y'all become all crazy, I'm going to call you on. We're going to call you on this show. I swear to you, man.
You both know my wife. My wife will probably keep me very, very grounded.
No, but it goes back to what I said, especially at the beginning of the show, especially at our courthouse. I mean, a lot of what we see now, the people we see running now for the bench, I mean, we've all been in this thing for a good long time now, and everybody has known each other. We all know each other's personality. And I mean, look, there are people running that I am like, this person is going to make a very good judge. And then there are people running that I'm like, this is going to be a complete disaster if this person gets on the bench, right? I mean, it happens. I blame party politics on that because they seem to not be able to, and this happens every time. Now, I will say this, I will give your party credit, okay? That this time around, you have picked candidates that for the most part are competent and qualified to be judges. That has not always been the case in the years past with the Democrats.
I'm very impressed with the lineup.
Well, I don't want to comment on anybody who's
No,
a
I know. You can let me be the one to comment.
Well, we just need stepping up and doing this.
Yeah.
It's between running a practice, having a family. I mean, you guys do this once a week, and you know how much it takes out of your life and the time it takes to do this. And it's important that you guys do this. But running for judge, it's a
Sure.
huge time commitment that may result in nothing. But it's this important thing. Especially, we both have little boys and we have little kids.
Right.
And this is not to downplay little girls as well. I didn't mean it that way, but just talking about our specific children. To teach them the lesson that if there's something in the system that's wrong, that it's not working right for the people, and that you're willing to do something about it, and you step up. That's an important lesson. If I lose and I explain to my 7-year-old on that Wednesday that I lost, I'm gonna be okay with it. I'm gonna tell him, yeah, I try to make a difference. I try to make the world a better place. And this time I lost, but I'm gonna keep on trying to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good lesson for people, and it's a good thing to do. And we're at a point in our lives where we can do that, and it's just important we have better people, like you said, who are stepping up to do this, who people are in the courthouse every single day.
I want to ask both of you, I mean, how easy was it for you, given the current climate of what we're seeing, that politicians or nominees for judge have to go through, the attacks, that sort of stuff? How much of a decision was it for you guys to get into this? I mean, to put yourself out there, to go through all
Sure.
this stuff and possibly be open to criticisms. And I mean, the Chronicle could write an article about you and say God knows what.
And my intention wasn't to run. It wasn't in my mind. I was fine doing what I did at the PD's office, but I was complaining. I was talking to some friends and they were saying, well, you know what, if you have an issue, you need to step up.
Absolutely.
And if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it. But if you have a better idea than what's going on, then go do something about it. And I spoke with my wife, who's my biggest pusher of anything. And she was like, you know what, Danny, you've worked, you've studied, it's time for you to move on and do something greater if that's what your calling needs to be. But don't sit on the sidelines and complain. And that's what made me, want to do it, and with my friends' support as well. But it wasn't my intention to run.
Well, okay, so we're sitting around the table with a bunch of old guys.
Watch it there.
Yeah, as I'm
Let's
older
not
than
discuss
Jimmy,
ages.
I'm
This is what
gonna
I'm- okay,
echo
okay.
his comment.
This is what I'm saying. They say around the 90s when the Republicans came in, was it 90s or early 2000s?
I think it was 94.
Yeah.
After Clinton had won, and then it kind of bounced back in Harris County.
I wasn't around. I mean, I was around. I mean, but I was part. I was at UT. Yeah, I was.
Like in diapers.
No.
You weren't
no,
in UT in
no.
the 90s, were you?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like 2005, 2006.
You were watching like Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I was. Okay, this is what I'm saying. I'm sitting around.
Nickelodeon's good.
I'm sitting
UT
around the-
good.
I'm sitting around a table with a bunch of old guys. I haven't seen something like this. What they're saying, what they're predicting. This is a fundamental shift. This is a fundamental shift. If this wave comes, as they say, it is a fundamental shift as to how business is done in Harris County, in one of the largest counties in the United States of America, death capital of the world for DWIs, death capital of the world for executions, which both of you are going to have to sign death writs. Both of you. This is a big deal. It's a fundamental. Is it going to happen? Is the wave there? I think that the more this Kavanaugh stuff and Trump and these kind of things, it's uniting this other force. What do you think about that?
That's a lot to think about. No, I think
I'm
you're
just saying.
You're 100%
is it gonna
right.
happen?
Objection,
It's-
compound question.
Compound. It's compound.
Jackson narrative. We could go on for a while. You're right. I think it's motivated a lot of people, and I think the big problem with one of the reasons, and I don't want to say big problem, but one of the reasons why Trump was elected was people didn't vote. And so the people who are now very upset and disagree with a lot of his policies are now realizing how much it matters to vote. And I think it's really energized people. And he is so far away from the George Bushes of the world, the moderate Republicans who, as a lifelong Democrat, I would have a beer with George Bush in 20 seconds if he invited me. I'd drive across country with the man. He is interesting. He's a great guy. He's a great American. I just disagree with some of his choices and his policies. I think our Republican Party has gotten away from that, and I think so many people are motivated because of some of the hateful things we said about our Hispanic population. What are we, a third Hispanic in Harris County? It's these things. It's just hurtful. It's divisive. I have lots of friends in the Muslim community. It's motivated people, and I think they're coming to realize like how much it matters to get out there and vote. And hopefully there is a blue wave coming, and hopefully we can institute real change.
And with that change, trust us, when it comes to Brian and I, we're ready, if we're so fortunate to be elected, to be a judge. And it's something that I prepared for, studying, being a prosecutor, being a defense attorney. It's something that you need to be ready for because this is serious stuff. We go to these parties, the events, and people are excited and they're proud to see what we have to offer. And I think that's what our selling point is.
And I think we've tried every case we've either handled as prosecutors or defense attorneys, anything that's going to come in front of us. So if you have a sexual assault case, if you have a murder case, it's not going to be Danny and I's first time ever handling one of those cases, ever trying one of those cases, and we know how that case needs to be tried and what those steps that need to be done to give both sides a fair trial.
That's right, and I think that's at least in my opinion, objectively, you have strengths. Each of you is experience. So like in superhero rating or whatever, it's your strength. You guys got good experience, which is comforting, which is satisfying in that there's individuals who are out there who have that. And I think that was part of what Jimmy was saying earlier is they have a lot of qualified candidates, which some of them y'all are running against.
Well, and see, I look at guys like you, and I look at several of the other candidates, and I just feel like the majority of this country is more centrist than we want to admit. My personal feeling is that both the Republican and the Democratic Party are so far from what they used to be that both of them have kind of lost their way. That's my honest opinion. That there is about 75% of us sitting in the middle here that really don't fit with the ideals of either party anymore, frankly. And I know y'all are running as Democrats, but I don't view y'all as the type of people that have the same ideals in my mind. And you don't have to comment on it, but I listen to what you guys say. I know you guys, and I don't see you as the extreme type that we see out there in the National Party, which is taking the Democratic Party in, frankly, a direction that is not what it's historically been. And likewise, I see friends of mine who are running as Republicans who are not where the Republican Party is going. And so I just wonder if at some point, this is the last year for straight ticket voting in Texas. And I just wonder if at some point we are going to have a viable third party and we might actually be able to vote on people's qualifications rather than whether they have an R or D by their name.
No, and that's the thing too, is that when we have a county this big, a lot of people go into the voting booth and it's almost impossible to know all those people unless you go talk to your civil friends and say and I do, and I have
or
my
you
civil
watch
friends.
shows like us.
Yeah, absolutely, and you say like, who are your good criminal judges? Who's running for misdemeanor bench that I need to support?
No, it's true.
It takes a lot to be educated, and there are a lot of people that don't have the time to do that. But you're right, we do. As judges, we're not making policy.
No.
We're there to ensure fairness and protect the system.
Well, and I argued last week, and I don't know if she's here or not. I don't see Katie back there today, but I argued.
She's at Abigail's.
Oh. But
She's at Abigail's.
But I argued last week when we were watching the beginnings of the Kavanaugh hearings that it's guys like you guys, if you get on the bench, it's the day-to-day judges that have the most effect on people's lives.
Absolutely.
That affect more people. I mean, yes, the issues at the Supreme Court are bigger, broader issues, but they don't necessarily affect as many people on a daily basis as what district court, county court judges do in Harris County.
Thousands.
Yeah.
There's going to be thousands of souls running through you guys in front of you, and you guys are going to be making decisions.
I think that's the most stressful part. Is it's not how am I going to be in trial? How am I going to make sure people have a fair trial? It's when you have especially a young person, and it's their whole lives in front of them, and you're now deciding they've been found guilty or if they pled guilty, and you're now deciding what is the fair thing, what's the right thing to happen to this person. And that's something that, if it doesn't keep you up at night, it should.
Yeah, I mean,
It's scary.
It is scary. I mean, because
It should be. Right?
Absolutely.
You should feel that way.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's like we're looking at a guy and deciding, we're looking at his 1982 calendar and putting all this scrutiny on stuff, and yet, outside of our little show here, people would step into the voting booth and know not a thing about you, and they could have a family member end up in front of one of y'all, and or whoever's on the bench. I mean, it's a weird thought. I mean,
Have you thought about, you obviously have. It would take me, if I were to ever run for judge, which I'm currently not going to run for judge. If I were to, the biggest thing would be.
I would support you, even with that purple tie.
I love the tie. I wore it on purpose, although it was a wrong choice.
It was the wrong choice. I'm not saying
It was
I don't
the
like
wrong
purple, it's
choice.
just the
I
timing
understand that
was
now.
bad.
You said it, and I had the orange one too, and I was going to wear it, but I didn't. The hardest thing for me would be punishment. Punishment. I've never been a prosecutor, so I've never been on that side, and I've never had to ask for punishment. How do you plan to handle that judgment? Was there a point in your life you said you can do this? Because that's a hurdle for me. Was there a point where, because you're going to run for judge, you're going to be signing terms in prison. How do you cope with that? Because I can't reconcile that in my head.
I mean, it's a big responsibility, and it's something that has to be done, and it's something that you don't take lightly. And when you become numb to it, there's a problem. And as a prosecutor, you would have to ask for, you'd ask for punishment when appropriate, and that's what you need to think about as well. The word is when it's appropriate. What is appropriate? What's the appropriate sentence for a person? Because whatever punishment someone is given in a particular case, it's just you're affecting his life, you're affecting the complaining witness's life, you're affecting their family's life. It's everything you need to put together, and that's where who you are as a person comes in.
Well, okay. So where does Danny as a person come in? Where does he draw his strength to make those decisions?
Growing up, growing up where I grew up, my family, my faith, the system, being on both sides, my temperament, all those things put together, that's who makes me, and that's who I plan on being and bringing to the bench.
What about you?
obviously agree. I think it's who you are as a person. It's what you've been through. I think it's important, not to knock anybody who chooses not to come on and talk to y'all, but, we're talking to colleagues. You guys know us. You guys have been in the trenches, both of you guys. You're going to be in there tomorrow.
That's right. I see you in court tomorrow. Both
You
of
probably
y'all,
will.
by the way.
And you guys have been in the trenches. You know the right questions to ask. It's important for us to have that feedback, but it is the most sincere responsibility of a judge is when you do punishment, and it should be something that scares you. It should be something that, you stress about. Maybe not scare. Scare is not the right word, but you should stress about it. It should be something that you debate seriously and that you don't do anything lightly. I know we've had judges now who've been on the bench, and this is not a criticism of Judge McSpadden by any way, but just in general. But we've had judges who've been on there for so long, and that we can kind of know, specifically which judges have, all right, I'm never giving probation on these type of cases.
Right.
Because I have a problem with these cases, and it doesn't matter what the facts are, this is what I've decided. Remember Judge Raines, who would never give probation because he didn't think it worked. And it's this preconceived notion, and you need to take it with like a heavy heart that you're what you are deciding. And then, have to come here and back it up, right?
You got to.
Yeah.
That's right.
What's our time?
We got a minute left.
We got a minute left. All right. So, last minute speeches, Jimmy. I take it.
Any closing statements before you guys?
Brian?
wanna go?
Oh, I get to go first. First of all, thank you for having us. I appreciate you guys having this forum that we as lawyers, as people who are running for judges, people who are going to be, that you're going to be in front of, and that we're representing the community. It's important for us to be here. That's what I think. And thank you guys so much for your feedback and letting us know and letting us answer your questions. And I appreciate your support.
And I also want to thank you guys for having us as well. And if anyone ever has any questions, they know where to find Brian and I. We're at the courthouse every single day because that's what we do for a living. I can speak for him on this. We take our jobs very seriously. And if we're elected to be a judge, we would take that seriously as well. And we wouldn't lose our common sense, and we wouldn't get big heads, and we'd take care of business and make sure everyone is treated fairly and equally.
And we'll be at the same place we're going to be tomorrow at the courthouse.
That's right. That's right.
We're going to make suggestion boxes, I think.
Hey, thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
No, you guys, and we got about 30 seconds left. I want to thank you guys for coming on, and you guys are the first in what we hope, of course, is a series of candidates coming on. We're not going to be able to get every candidate on, ladies and gentlemen. We'd love to, but we just don't have the time to do it. If we can, maybe we can make some more space around here.
We got a big table. We got a big table.
The tables.
We can crowd people in, but I thank you guys for coming on, being the first two, the guinea pigs of this latest.
Not getting to watch anybody do this first.
Yeah,
You guys
exactly.
are on the hot seat.
You guys are the warm-up act here, the opening act. So
Good.
You guys may get much rougher in your questioning,
No,
so it might have been a good thing going
The
first,
clips
right?
are going to skyrocket.
It could only go up from here, folks.
I wonder if we'll get rougher in the
I know.
the exchanges between the candidates.
There's a lot of softballs tonight.
Yeah.
A lot of softballs.
You're trying to convince us to come back.
A lot of softballs.
Exactly. But I want to thank our guests tonight, Brian Warren, Danny Lacayo, and for my purple-tied co-host, Julio Vela. That's all the time we have for this week, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back next Thursday with another episode of Reasonable Doubt. Good night.